This is just a quick video to explain some of the parts of this sort of compost heated mini grow house that I'm building. And this is the third one I'm making, and I think they're really quite effective, and I've been propagating plants in here. And what I'd like to do is sort of open source these files and encourage others to try and make them themselves, and sort of try and get some feedback on there and sort of see how they work. But what I've done is I've actually found a source of the 5mm acrylic from a local laser cutter. So this is all from their scrap bin, and it actually comes in quite large sheets. The sheets are around about 500mm up to about 3 meters long, so they're big chunks of acrylic, and it's 5mm thick. So if you're buying this, maybe 1.5 meters by a meter would be around about £20 or something like that. So it's quite an expensive material. It's not cheap at all. And what is also nice is the local laser cutters, because they pay a premium for getting the materials taken away and recycled. They're quite happy to sort of upcycle it and encourage people to actually make use of it, which seems to make sense. But also what is nice as well is that their recycling scheme with their skip outside, the very small offcuts I get after I've actually produced these, I can actually take back to the laser cutter, and they will put those in the recycling. So it really is very minimal waste, and it's always good if you can kind of repurpose and reuse, as opposed to sending materials away. I don't know whether they'd be taken to recycle, possibly somewhere like Germany, and there's obviously a large CO2 footprint with taking those materials and moving them around the country or overseas to be recycled. So what I've done is, the way it works is, I've created these end sections, and if you can see, it's basically just a rectangular piece, and I've just taken the corner off. So all the hardware, all the mechanical fixings there, the panel itself is only held in with 4 screws where the cross braces go. So the cross braces fix on these holes here. So if you want to, in the height of summer, when you don't really need a greenhouse for that much sort of heat. The problem with greenhouses in the summer is they get too hot, so you want lots and lots of ventilation. So what you can do is you can just undo these 4 machine screws and take the panel out, and then just have it as a sort of little rain cover, really, which is quite good. Or you could also put some sort of mesh in there, or you can actually gives it a little bit more flexibility. What I was thinking of doing is actually using these for like an alpine house as well, so you don't actually need the sides, you just want to keep excess rain off. So it's quite nice. It gives you that level of flexibility, and it encourages you to use it for different purposes as well. So when I was designing this, I wanted the parts to be easy to make. So one way of making these parts, especially on things like this end panel where you've got lots of repetition, you need two of these on each sort of bay, and then you've got these little vents for 80mm fans, and then you've got the larger manual vent just for opening and closing it, just a little bit of circulation. So what I made that so it fits onto sort of an A3 laser cutter, and you could scale this up. You can make this any size you'd like, really. The only thing is, if you're scaling it up, what I'd suggest is these cloche clips, which I use for roof. You might have, I use 3, but you might have 4 or 5, depending on how long this is. So I think this is a nice size. You can fit a few seed trays in here, and it's a bit like a kind of saw roof, sort of factory roof. You can have maybe 4 of these in a row. We could scale them up, make them 2 foot by 4 foot long, and then you could have 4 of those on an 8 foot by 4 foot bed, which would give you a really good grow space. So what I've done here, I'm going to make these open source, these files. So as you can see, this is the acrylic. It's actually, I've taken off the cellophane on one side, but it looks quite hazy. It's still got that protective covering on it, and as I said, this is from a laser cutter's scrap bin. It's actually brand new material. It's still got the cellophane on there, and many of the pieces are actually nicely square cut because it's all gone through the laser cutter. So that's the end panel for the sort of gable end, and then I've made these sort of ventilators, and these still got the cellophane on. They're actually clear, and they fix on with 5mm machine screws. I use these sort of button head stainless steel fixings, because otherwise it's going to get rusty and they're going to kind of stain. So there's the other part of the vent, so that can open and close. And I made these to suit 80mm PC case exhaust fans. Another element of this is that you could actually think about using automation. You could use a Raspberry Pi or Arduino. You can have irrigation systems or sort of ventilation and fans. There's loads of scope for developing this project as well. So I think once you've got the actual grow house, and once you've got something like this, which is it's easy to make and it's easy to reproduce, you could make any number of these, and you could expand to sort of suit how popular the kind of project is within your school, or as a cross-curricular thing with ICT and science as well. So you could have sort of biology, you could do studies, and you could look at different plants and habitats, and you could grow even things like clover and green manures and things like that. So there's so much scope for this project. I think it could be really exciting. So that's the Gable End. So I've scaled that to roughly suit A3. So like a TechSoft A3 plus laser cutter. So that fixes on like this. And the Gable End is just held in by one of these Cloche clips. And I'm actually going to modify this, and I'm going to slot that out so it makes it slightly easier to use, and that just hooks over the top, and then the two roof sections just bolt into that kind of clamp, and you tighten it up with a wing nut on top where my thumb is. So I'll explain this in a little bit more detail, but this is just kind of an overview really, just the different pieces and different parts, and I'll make drawings available for this too. So to locate the Gable End, I've just made this aluminium kind of clip. Just 20mm wide. It's got a little upstand on it, and then I've bent this over, and so this is all 25mm angle. That clip just hooks over to the top section here, and then that locates the Gable End, and then that gable is held in. It's held in by the sides, the roof sections. It's also held in by that Cloche clip at the top. And what's quite nice about these is it's all sort of, you can kind of knock it down. You can have it as just a single cloche. You can add this as an extension. You can make it into like a mini greenhouse, or you could just use that, just like a cloche frame on its own. So that would start you off with this sort of project, and then you can sort of expand to suit. So the dimensions I'm working with on this one here, I've got the dimensions pretty straightforward. It is actually, obviously I'm measuring to the outside of the angle. The cross pieces are 420mm long. The angle is 25 by 25, and the thickness is 1.5mm. So it's quite light duty aluminium angle. And then the height of this is 300mm, so 300mm long. So you need to cut 4 cross pieces, 4 uprights, and then the lengths for the front and back as well, so they'll just bolt on. I haven't drilled the holes in these, but they'll just bolt on like that. And on this one, because I wanted to use it without the glazing as well, I've added these 16mm by 3mm aluminium strips, and they just bolt through those bolt holes there. So you can take the glazing out, and it's going to be nice and rigid as well. So on these are the uprights. So these are 300mm long pieces. And what I've done here, if we go up that way, the holes in the ends, I've drilled these 10mm from the inside and 12.5mm down from the end. And for the cross braces, I've just measured down 120mm. So that's from 120mm from the top. And for the front and back, I've measured 120mm from the base as well. So that just means when those cross bases are bolted on, you don't end up with the bolts in the same place. So I've just staggered those a little bit. So that's basically the sides. So I mean, it's so simple. It's just 300 long, hole in each end, holes in the center just for the cross braces. You don't really need the cross braces unless you're going to think about taking the glazing out, but I think that just gives it a bit more flexibility. This is the cross piece, and what I've done here, 10mm from the bottom edge from that web on the angle, and I've measured 20mm apart, so that's 200mm from each end, 200, and the overall length of this is 420mm. And all I do is when I fix this together, I use a toolmaker's clamp, offer that up against an engineer's square, and then clamp that so it's square, and then all I do is just on a pillar drill, I drill through just that hole there just to locate that so that gets it nice and square. And then once I've done one, I'll put a nut and bolt in there loosely, and then I'll do the same with the next corner, and then I'll have that little assembly. And then once again I'll just don't even need the pillar drill for this bit, but once I've got those holes in there, I'll lay the perspex on there, and then I'll just drill through there just to mark. Or you can continue just drilling through, or you can start it off on here using that as a guide, and then you can drill the acrylic sheet for the end pieces. They're quite straightforward. One thing I'd suggest when you're using aluminium, if you use zinc plated screws, they will tend to actually corrode. You get a sort of galvanic reaction, and so I use aluminium greenhouse screws. You have to buy these maybe a pack of 50 at a time. I think these are 12mm long, but I need to source some slightly longer. And these go through the aluminium and also the cross braces and the thickness of the 6mm. So I think these need to be 16mm long, and I had to order some of these. These are just square headed ones. You can get round headed ones from like aluminium rainwater guttering and things like that, but I'm sure you'll be able to source any of those parts if you're interested in an actual project. To make the ventilators on here, this one is going to be used quite often and it's quite large, so what I did, I've got a little rubber washer, and then I sandwiched that between the 3mm ventilator with a little penny washer, like a kind of stainless steel mud flap washer. These are about 25mm diameter, and then I've got the button headed M6 machine screw through there. I've got the washer sandwiched between the two pieces of acrylic, and then I've just got a nylock nut, so when you're turning this it's not going to tighten up or loosen when you keep moving this. And likewise on these, I've got little nylon nuts on those. I haven't got the washers on these, not quite as important because they're quite small. And I've just got the M4 nut through there and a smaller washer. And on here, I'm just using M5 button head screws. And then I've left these over long because I'm going to, at the moment they've just got nuts on there, but I'm going to put a clear acrylic PC case fan on there, and then I'm connecting this up to either an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi just to automate and vent. So yeah, it's a nice project, and what is nice as well, because these bits can be laser cut. Alternatively, you could actually make, if you don't have a laser cutter, you can make an initial one by hand, and then what I'd suggest is use a router with a bearing guided router bit on it. So you could use double-sided tape, stick that to your acrylic, cut it round roughly with a bandsaw, and then you can cut the vents, and then just use the bearing guided cutter just to follow around the edge, just to give you a nice sort of polished edge. So yeah, it's quite a few stages, but it's not massively time consuming. If you've got a laser cutter, you could churn out a few of these in an afternoon and have a really good growing space. And like I said, it's really dependent on getting that free material. I think if you can keep the cost down, the overall cost for this is $24.99 for the pack of 3 8 foot lengths of 25mm aluminium angle, so 2.4 meter lengths. And when I finished, I don't know, yeah, these are the offcuts, because there's 3 lengths. We've got 2 short pieces about 60 millimeters long, and then that one's about 120 millimeters long. And these are good because you can use those for mounting brackets for solar panels and things like that, and obviously fan mounts and whatever you wish, really. So it uses up pretty much all the material, which is nice. The cross braces, you don't actually need those, but I think it's kind of nice to give you that level of flexibility. And the only thing that I've had an issue with is on my prototype one, I used a sort of F-shaped channel which had some sliding doors in it. On these ones, I'm making those an extension, so I've only got the doors on the one end, but you can get a single drawer runner which will just fix on, so that's quite straightforward, but it doesn't give you that flexibility of having the doors being able to sort of slide past each other to give you a bit more of a sort of easier opening. So yeah, that's 16 minutes. I think that's quite long enough for this part, and what I'll do is I'll do a bit more of a run through of the finished grow house, just to give you a bit more of an idea. So thanks for watching.